So one of the things we're going to do as we start is begin with a question that came in online, and so I'll repeat that question and then get out of the way. And I'm paraphrasing, but there was a BCBA who did an assessment on a child, and after she had finished the assessment, but prior to writing a report with recommendations and so forth, found out that the child's parent was in his or her church. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. Found out that the parent was in the same church. So this person's question is, at this point, what do I do? Do I just go ahead and write the report, or should I try and find somebody else to take over the case, which may mean, starting from scratch, doing a brand new assessment? So.
All right, what do you guys think?
As long as there's no, information shared with other people.
Could there be? I guess the question asked without asking is this a conflict of interest? Is the presumption, Kobe, that they would write the report and then start engaging in services? Is that sort of the implication of the question?
It said, one of the options would be to not continue with the report and do not provide services. So I guess that implies that if he wrote the report, that he or she would then provide services.
We've had at least one situation like that come up in Tallahassee, which is the churches tend to be a little smaller there, and people would come up to the behavior analyst and start chatting with them about, oh, I saw you working with so-and-so's kid, and then you have to say I can't discuss it, and it gets to be a touchy situation. You have to figure out, well, do they have services on different days that I could go to so I don't run into this person? And to me, it sounds like a conflict of interest. Anybody else want to jump in? It seems to me here would be the cleanest thing. Once you found this out, you find somebody else, you give them the assessment, ask them to write the report, let them do it. Check with them to find out. You don't go to this Third Baptist, do you? Or, just to make sure that you don't get into it, because it's that sort of thing. If the person ever came up to you and said something about it, that session you did the other day, I heard that didn't go very well, and you've got some parishioners standing around, you violated some confidentiality. It just seems like a sticky situation to me. Hold on.
I told you I wanted. Should we just get an extra over here?
If the parent wants to share the information, that's up to them. As long as the behavior analyst doesn't go up and share it, that's not a conflict of interest. And
no,
right?
No, it's not.
The parent can kind of blabber to whoever they want to blabber to.
Sure. You would advise them not to, of course, but the parents could. But what about you're providing services to somebody that you have this other relationship with, which is you share this church and its values and...
Well, the fact that you worship at the same place is like saying we shop at the same grocery store, or we buy shoes at the same mall, or any other places where you could casually see somebody. I don't know that going to church forces any kind of extra communication with people.
I'm not so sure about that. It's almost like in my experience is if you go to this church, you're part of the family, and family shares everything, and we support one another, and you help me and I help you, and people ask for help and you say no. Well, what's wrong with you? And the reason I'm not going to provide the help is that's not part of the service.
Well, what happens then if you kind of play it out, and so you hand it off to somebody else, and then their kids end up on the same softball team, and then it gets passed to somebody else, and it just some of that is unavoidable. depending on the size of the town or the size of the church or anything else. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would
It
automatically
gets to
make
be
it
it gets to be
complex.
sticky. I think the position of the board, as I read the code, is that once you detect something like this, you do your best to work it out so it's not a problem, as opposed to, well, that's just what it is. It is what it is. I don't think they would take kindly to it is what it is situation. If you showed that you had made good efforts to come up with other solutions and none of them worked, but you operated in good faith, you might be okay. We good to go? Here's another one I think is fairly simple. This is one of the questions that came in. People ask for tips on handling a child with behavior problems. Somehow they know that you're a behavior analyst, and it could be the church situation. Let's say you belong to this church and somebody comes up and says, "Oh, I heard you were a behavior analyst," and you've got these two brats right there. You can see for yourself they need help. Just as an aside, you think about that, let me just put in a plug for behavior analysts who have kids. They sure better be pretty darn good, near perfect kids, right? Because you're a behavior analyst. None of this, "Oh, you ought to see my kids are out of control." We don't have any of those people here, do we? Or around the world either, because it's a fairly big burden. It's a big burden. Let's say you're a nurse and you have a couple kids and they're out of control. You're off the hook. But nurses don't know anything about behavior. Or an architect, or a contractor, or a plumber. All those people can have kids out of control, but not you. Like a dentist. Let's say you meet your dentist and the dentist is with her kids and they smile and their teeth are all, ugh. You'd say, "That is wrong. That is dead wrong. You can't do that." You can have bad teeth and good behavior if you're a behavior analyst. That's okay. Ditto on dogs. Anybody got a dog? Better be well controlled, well behaved. All right. Okay. When I got my dog, and I was told he was not trainable by some experts as in the dog world. I got him as a puppy, and he was cute and he was lovable, and of course I would do training with him because I'm a behavior analyst. And I suddenly, after he was about 6 months old, and I realized this guy is a handful. I'm going to have to do some training. How embarrassing would it be for me to be out walking him in the neighborhood or something, all out of control? That would be terrible for the field. So anyway, I trained him a lot, and we spent many a weekend up here in Atlanta competing in shows in obedience and agility. And anyway, so he was very good, very well behaved. I used to bring him to class. Did I ever bring him to your class? He was probably too old by the time you came through. Okay, what do we do? Give him some tips. Say, what does he do? Oh yeah, here's what you do. What's the code say? Code says no because
you haven't seen the child?
a little bit more than that.
You don't have data?
More than that. Huh?
You don't have a contract?
Yeah, it's not actually your client. You have no contracted arrangement, no formal arrangement. They want you, other than your own kids, they want you to provide services only on a contractual, formal basis, where you're the behavior analyst and they're the client. Other than that, they don't want you out just giving free advice to anybody that asks. It's not considered a good idea. So we know what you can't do. How do you get through this with your professional skills? Yes.
This is not my question, but I actually had this come up recently. The way I handled it is that I let the person know I would love to be able to help you, but here are the ethical standards that I must, live by as a BCBA. However, let me just point you to some general resources,
Excellent.
like resources on classroom management or resources on including the child with ASD in your inclusive classroom. And she took it and ran with it. So
Perfect. It's all, and we didn't discuss this beforehand.
That was her question.
Oh,
Now I'm ready.
yeah. 804D, behavior analysts provide public statements, advice, or comments by means of, and this is really intended for the big stuff, but it also includes conversations, and it's not appropriate, and the advice or comment doesn't create an agreement, so you don't have an agreement. So the best advice is to give them something that's readily available. So within an agency, you could compile a list of videotapes or books or whatever it is, and then just be ready to hand those out to people. Most anything that people could find on their own, this is a pretty good book. A lot of people in Florida use that with a big statewide training. Anything they could find on their own, then you're just helping them find it, is basically what it amounts to. That doesn't mean you endorse it, although I wouldn't give them a book if I hadn't read it and didn't believe it. But so that's a good safe bet. So I think that's simple. It's within your own control. You don't have to get permission from anybody else as to what you're going to say. It's one-to-one. There's not a great risk. Simple problem. I believe this is also one of the items that was sent in. I think this probably comes from California because of the regional center language. I'll let you read that. This actually looks back to that issue of lesser of two evils, sort of, or what is the, if we're going to do no harm, what's in the best interest of the client? I think that question is probably relevant here. I make it sort of a medium difficulty or medium complex question because you've got to know something about the politics of dealing with the regional center. And I don't have a full understanding of this, but I think they give you cases and money is attached to the cases, and then if you don't do them, you don't get the money. And basically what they're saying is, we've spent enough money on this case, we want it back. We want the money back, we want to give it to somebody else. And you might have to go up against those people, so you've got to have some kind of clout with you. You might not be able to solve this problem alone. You might have to go to your supervisor or your administrator, somebody like that, explain it, and the two of you might have to go in, maybe even the parents have to go in. So this could end up being a moderately big deal. I think it comes under this general category, interrupting, discontinuing services. Behavior analysts act in the best interest of the clients. Then D says discontinuation only occurs after efforts to transition have been made. Behavior analysts discontinue professional relationship timely manner when the client no longer needs the service, not benefiting from the service, is being harmed by continued service, client requests. So the regional center is arguing two, that the client's no longer benefiting. And if you, in your own professional judgment, feels that that's not true, then you have to argue the case. And the code would not like you to just roll over on this and say, okay, fine. Because they would see that as a violation, and you could be in the technical language that we're using today dinged for that one. Comments on that one? I'll let you read this one. Everybody got this one? I actually know this person. This comes in from overseas. So the first sentence says, I've received concerns from 7 professionals, 2 parents regarding the nature of these particular, there was actually a paragraph before this, but it didn't look like it was totally relevant here. 7 professionals, 2 parents regarding the nature of the particular BCABA services. Then launches into these 2 people. The odd thing about this is that these are 2 BCABAs, and yet they're acting, like they're bigger than life. And they are not responsible to anybody. So they send out intimidating emails, threatening to take legal action, responded blatantly saying they would not provide the information. So first question here is, who has firsthand information?
Who's the I? Is the parent?
No, this is the BCBA that sent this question in.
How are they related to, like, why would the professionals and the parents talk to this person about the BCABAs if they're not their supervisor?
Somehow or another, they're small community or something, and these people know each other. Maybe these professionals and parents are not happy with the BCABA services, and they were talking about it to these other people, and they knew each other. Like they talked about it. When they say the 7 professionals, some of those might have been the ones providing services to the family, and they spoke to this person. That's where I put it in complicated. This is kind of complicated to sort all this out. So, first problem here is you don't have firsthand information. Then what is your ethical obligation? Yeah, the people who do have firsthand, like one of the 7 professionals or the 2 parents, should take this on. This becomes really their job to do that. So yeah, okay. Anybody got anything else on that?
They have firsthand information that they sent threatening emails and that they wouldn't tell them who their supervisor is.
Well, the person who wrote this, the I in this, took it on herself to contact them and say, who is your supervisor anyway? And they refused. Now, I don't know. They could have said, well, we'd rather not. But apparently they were more aggressive than that. And I think that didn't sit well. The idea is if somebody asks you that and you're a colleague, you share the information. The other implication is that either they don't have a supervisor and they're really rogue BCABAs, rogue behavior analysts. I've actually run into a couple of those here in the last year. I never thought I'd see the day that we'd say somebody was like that. But, so that's the concern, that this person is giving the whole field a bad reputation, probably serving clients poorly. And I think the thing about the intimidating emails, the implication there is that if any of the 7 professionals or 2 parents approach these people, they would probably get a similar dose of this. I do not think the board would take lightly to that. I think if they had copies of those intimidating emails, I suspect they would jump in on this case. (702) comes to mind, ethical violations by others, risk of harm. That RBT in red over there means, and if you look through the posted code, those letters are throughout the code, the new code, and that means that this applies to any registered behavior technician. Behavior analysts believe there may be legal or ethical violation. They first determine whether there's potential for harm, possible legal violation, mandatory reporting condition, or agency, organization, regulatory required for addressing the violation. You'd have to look at clients' legal rights. The people who are going to report this have to take that into account. I think this is probably a case where the people who have firsthand knowledge are easily intimidated and don't want to get into this. I'm sort of in the middle of a case right now where a student was working at a facility as for her practicum experience and to accumulate hours, and there were several, maybe more than 2 BCBAs there. She started working there. She'd been there, I guess, maybe a month, and then she started writing me saying, "Does this sound right to you? I don't feel comfortable about the way they're handling this or that or something else." Part of it was her supervision. She wasn't really getting supervision. But then there were some other things, and I wrote back and said, "No, that's not right. And that's a reportable violation," and all this kind of stuff. And then there was more, and then there was more. She eventually quit, but on her way out, she informed the people of the agency, "Here's all the violations that I saw while I was here, and I feel compelled to report you." And she ran that by me, and I said, "I think that's the right thing to do." So just, I guess, 3 days ago, she wrote me, and you could tell it was all jittery typos and stuff in the thing. Now she's being sued, and the company is after her, and they're threatening to destroy her so that she can never work in this profession again. And I told her, I'll back you on this, whatever you want to do. But you did the right thing. You absolutely did the right thing. And that kind of goes to these complex cases where that could happen. This is the first case where I've been close to anything like this. And I never really thought it would come to that. I thought people would be so humiliated by being reported by a little lowly intern that they would clean up their act, not sue the person. So we'll see what happens to that case. You need to know in this particular case whether this is just bad manners on the part of these BCABAs or there's actually some client rights being violated. That ups at a level, or a couple levels actually. And then this quote, which wasn't in the original one: "The individuals who have discussed these concerns with me are afraid to address the incident with the BCABAs directly. They fear that these individuals will ruin their business." That's sort of what we're up against. And you know, the kind of people who would make those kinds of threats don't make our field look good at all. And we'll have to figure out some way to do this. As an aside, on this case I was discussing just a minute ago, the student discovered or remembered that she had bought a insurance policy, liability insurance, to protect her against lawsuits. Not this kind of thing, but like if you harmed a client and the parent sued you, you'd have some insurance to cover, help, whatever. But anyway, she remembered that, and she looked up the policy and contacted the insurance company, and they said, well, we'll represent you. I mean, You're a policy holder, and that's what the policy says. And that reminds me to tell you and anybody else who will listen, make sure you've got insurance, because you never know when this stupid stuff is going to come up. Professional insurance is generally not that expensive, and so I would urge you to get that just based on my recent experience. Okay, this is another one that came in. I'll let you read this one. Let's start with what makes this complex.
Father lives somewhere else and they're not really observing any abuse.
Yeah, you didn't see it happen. So that makes it complicated about, well, what are your obligations when you don't actually see it? So what are your obligations if you don't actually see the abuse?
Although the parent, if they saw it, to report it, I would say, but the mother doesn't seem to have seen it.
Right. What she sees, what she thinks she sees is a bruise. If you're a nurse or a physician and a kid comes in for, a headache or a cough or an exam or something, and you see a bruise, you've got to report it. You're medically trained, you see lots of bruises, and you look at this and say, no, the kid didn't run into a door. Somebody hit this kid. You have to report it. So part of this thing borders on, are you a mandated reporter for this? The mother wants you to be, because that will support her position that the dad is dangerous. And I gather that she would like to get custody, probably is what she's going through here, sole custody.
Shouldn't you report in case it's the mother doing it?
Very good question. Very good question. The question really, sorry?
I said, will you repeat the question?
Oh.
Slow with the mic.
Oh. Is this reportable? And do we know who, if it is a bruise, how it happened and who did it? Do we know that? And I think the answer is that we don't know. And what you've got going on here is an observer influence effect, where somebody says, oh, look at that, look at that. And instead of saying, I don't see it, you agree to it. And that's how they stepped in it right there. And the option that they had, when she would point out the bruises and ask if we saw them, we would say yes. Now, right there was a turning point, because what else could they have said? I don't know. I'm not trained. It doesn't look like a bruise to me. I mean, you could have denied that instead of being complicit now with the mom. And of course, I'm only saying that under the circumstances where it would be true that you didn't actually see it happen, and you don't know if that's a bruise or not. Kids play on playgrounds and they get bruised. So they stepped in it right there when they would say yes. Because if they had said something else like, no, I don't see it, or it doesn't look like a bruise to me, I'm not qualified, if they'd done anything else, they would have been okay. But now the mom can quote them. If they get to court, she can say, these two behavior analysts looked at it and they saw it too. Now you're really in it, because you could be cross-examined and it's going to be a mess. A lot of her speech was passively, I would say not passively, but actively making her part of her situation. So here's the remainder. None of us ever observed the father hurting the child in any way during our sessions with him or doing anything worrisome. The mother has a history of mental instability, depression, labile mood, severe OCD, continuous medical complaints. She has a self-admitted history of suing people or threatening to sue multiple times in her life. Now that changes the picture a little bit, but I think it changes it just in the direction of complexity. So, oh boy, now you've stepped in it. And the question is, can you get out? Is there a way out? I'll start the sentence for you and you finish it. You remember the other day you pointed at something on little Billy's arm and asked us if we saw a bruise?
Yes.
I remember. And then what else do you say?
There's concern about how the child's father is treating your son. Then maybe you ought to report it. Put it back in her hands, it seems to me.
You got to get it out of yours and then back into hers. That's what you got to do. Do we need to work with the mic here? So
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I saw the look on your face and I was like, maybe he doesn't want the mic.
That was a research medium. Well,
How do you-
put it back in the parent's hands. So to complete your sentence, John, I think that what we would say is, yes, I remember when you showed us the bruises, and I did indicate that I saw the bruise. And if you're concerned that the father is doing something to create those injuries to your son, then I think you need to handle that by either reporting him or taking it up with him.
But I can tell my attorney that you saw it too, right? I can tell him you'll vouch for it. You'll vouch for the fact that he did it, right? Right?
Yes, but I'm not trained to know whether those bruises are from abuse or whether he fell on the playground.
Do we need the mic? These people
Or-
people are not following the rules. I apologize.
You can just repeat it.
We need a drone to deliver the.
No, I just said you could tell them I'm not trained to know whether those are bruises.
Okay, stop right there. Ma'am, you're on the right track, but I want to give you an autoclitic just before
Okay.
that. You know about autoclitics? Skinner's verbal behavior. It's what you say in front of a sentence that you're about to say that makes all the difference in the sentence that you're about to say. You remember?
Sorry, I pressed Siri.
You're jumping the gun, girl. They're telling you how to get home. We're not even close. You remember the other day where I said I thought I saw a bruise?
I saw the bruise. But
Wait, pass it back there.
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, no. Let's give some honest person a chance here.
Nobody's going to want to touch the microphone. Should I just throw it and see who catches it? Yeah.
I remember a discussion
Yes, good.
regarding what you're talking about.
Yes.
However,
Good. However, that's a good autoclitic.
I did not witness the abuse myself, but I do remember the discussion.
But you saw the bruise, right? You saw the bruise. I showed it to you, and you said, yeah, I see it.
I'm not sure if I remember our discussion about it.
let me give you a word that's a very handy word. You probably want to write this down. It's misspoke.
Oh.
I misspoke myself. When you asked me if I saw it, I said yes, but that's not what I intended to say. Here's what I should have said. What I should have said is, now we're back to you.
I'm not trained
There you
to identify whether it was a bruise or not, or whether or not it came from abuse or from the playground.
Exactly. Now, and there could be some other truths in there, like if you had kids, you could say, you know, I got home and Billy had a bruise. And I said, Billy, how'd that happen? And he goes, oh, I don't know, Mommy. And you say, come on, how did it happen? Well, I got into a scuffle on the playground or whatever. And then I realized, gosh, that thing that you showed me the other day, that could have come from something else that none of us saw. Kids do have situations like that. Or you could say, after that discussion we had, I went home and had a visit with my brother, who's an attorney. And I mentioned this to him, and he said, you need to backtrack on that, sister. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself in a heap of trouble. So you don't tell the mom about the backtracking and heap of trouble stuff, but you just say, I am so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything like that. I don't have any evidence. I misspoke in the moment. And then you're back on the record of, I'm taking it back. And then a good idea, given this kind of contentious situation, is make sure that you've got a notebook where you keep track of all this. You've got the first conversation, you've got the second one. If it ever comes up, you can say, well, no, wait, remember? Just a couple days later, I came back, I have it right here in my notes. I came in, it was 2:30 in the afternoon, and I said, we need to talk about that thing we talked about the other day. So you've got some contemporaneous notes. Those will really save you if you ever need them.
I would
in
just,
the back,
sorry,
yes.
no, I'm sorry, just a comment when you're saying documentation. If this is a therapist level person, well, anybody actually, but specifically if it's a therapist level person, I would say, and you must report to your supervising BCBA. Just so that there's double records of something like that, that should a lawsuit happen, you'd have double documentation.
Sure, good idea, yep. This situation brings to mind Rule 1. Everybody know what Rule 1 is? Don't take sides in a divorce. Nothing good can come from this. It's like loaning money to a relative. Nothing good can come from that. So don't take sides, because it will get you. Now, with regard to that so-called bruise, I think that you were on the right track. I'm not medically trained. I don't really know. It'd probably be a good idea to talk to your pediatrician about that. They're trained. Maybe they would know something about that. Medical consultation, that has been cleared up a little bit in this code. It was in the last code, but it's been given its own item, and I think that shows the importance on the part of the board that we allow for medical and biological variables. History of suing people, that's something that is a red flag for anybody, and it reminds me of this expression, let's be careful out there. For any of you who remember Hill Street Blues, Hill Street Blues is probably available on Netflix. It's really the origin of everything we know in terms of cop shows. So that's just, if you hear that word, suing people, you really want to be careful. Okay, so one way to prevent a lot of problems is the use of antecedent control. And my version of antecedent control is to use this Declaration of Professional Practices and Procedures. And you should have a copy. I think that was a handout or a send out. I'm not quite sure how that works. for a lot of problems that come up, if you tell people in advance, like the questions about people want, they keep asking me questions, or they want to give me a gift, or they want to invite me to a party or something like that. And if you tell them on the front end, right when you initiate services, here's my declaration, here's the way I work, here's what's involved. And if you look through that handout, you'll see all the different sections. I've put together a couple of them here for you. You describe your areas of expertise, describe what you do, describe how you work, and then you introduce them to the concept that as a behavior analyst, I've got this code of ethics that I am obligated to stick to. You want to come back? And this, I think there's some questions, and I don't know if I pasted them in or not, but I think there was some questions in there about families want to invite us to parties and stuff, or give gifts, or whatever it is. And so that becomes a little bit of a complex problem, because you don't want to insult people and all that kind of stuff. So part of the answer is antecedent control. So you tell them on the front end, by the way, if this should ever come up, I'm not allowed to accept gifts, even token gifts. I'm not allowed to accept. And I'd love to come to your birthday parties for your kid, but I can't. And I hope that's okay with you. Then, as the seasons roll around and you know that they're going to give out something like that, you warn them again. So by that point, you kind of know what you're dealing with, and you can tell them, by the way, I can't. Okay, so we're going to get into some basics about this complex formulation. Here's a case. Ignore that, number 2 in your packet, ignore that. I'm a BCBA-D behavior therapist with 1.5 years experience. I work at a small private for-profit school. Involves several children ages 5 to 7. That's not the actual school, but it looks fairly close, actually. It's in Tallahassee. I'm assigned to do one-on-one therapy with autistic children. One day, an additional child was brought to me since another therapist was out sick. I was not given a curriculum sheet or any instructions about him. I was told, this is just for today, make it work, which I did. But my primary student got nothing done, since it was all I could do to manage the second child. The next day I was told the same thing, make it work, this is just temporary. Again, I got very little accomplished. Basically babysitting. This went on the rest of the week. Essentially, I was just babysitting these 2 kids. The parents of my primary child caught me on Friday and reported that their child seemed restless, less verbal, wanted to know if I knew any problems. I lied and said that sometimes it goes like that, ups and downs, good weeks and bad weeks. I felt horrible and went to the owner and said I didn't feel comfortable with the situation. I probably shouldn't have, but I said, are we still billing as though the children are getting 1-to-1? The owner said, that's a business matter. Just stick to the therapy. It will work out okay. What about the parents? Do they know? I asked. She just stared at me and then she walked away. I have the strong suspicion that the school is billing for one-on-one therapy for each child, and that they've not told the parents or the insurance company of this new arrangement. 2 very good BCBAs that I liked and trusted left the school 6 months earlier. One was the clinical director, very ethical person. I asked the owner why they left and was told it's just a professional difference of opinion. What should I do? Go to the business manager, go to the parents. Are we time for break? All right. So hold on to that thought and come back and we'll continue on with this one.